Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to talk about the Krig 6 and why it is not top tier viable. I really wanted to make it top tier viable because then obviously that's a good thing. More weapons into the economy of Warzone, then more variety in the game. Obviously the dominant thing right now is the FFAR, AMAX, the AUG, three of the most dominant weapons currently in the game. And like I put out a video about the XM4, which is definitely top tier viable, and the AK-47, top tier viable if you know how to use it. The Krig 6 does not fall into that. We're going to go ahead and explain why. So I'm going to give you a class setup and explain why I'm using the specific attachments. But overall, I do not think this weapon is all that great. Is it viable? Sure. If you land your shots, the TTK is relatively okay. But I'm going to talk about why it doesn't actually perform towards expectations once you start using it. If you enjoyed the video, learned something new, please do me a favor, hit that like button. Goal on today's video is 7,500 likes, so hopefully you can help me crush that number. If you're brand new, looking to find your way back, double check, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. Quick little heads up, I am posting a video over on my second channel. I was able to jump in and get some games in with Truegamedata, XclusiveAce, and Drifter as we went into a couple matches and ended up getting a win. So that'll be posted over on my second channel, which will be linked near the top of the description. First thing we'll go ahead and start off with is the recoil. This weapon is very low recoil, and we'll go ahead and look at the recoil patterns now. So this recoil pattern is actually pretty straightforward, and the attachments do exactly what they say they're going to do. And we've noticed a kind of a trend with all the Cold War weapons. They essentially work the same. You use this specific attachment, it's doing what it says with the rear or with the front grips, as well as the agency suppressor, silencer, depending on the weapon we're talking about. Base Krig 30 rounds pretty much just goes up a little bit to the right and then up again. Nothing crazy. This is relatively easy control. It fits mostly in line with like the Kilo, the M13, which are very low recoil, as well as the Growl. But for whatever reason, it just doesn't perform quite as good as those weapons. I would still take the Kilo over the Krig 6, and we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about why that is actually. We also have the agency suppressor. It helps with the vertical recoil. You can kind of see it's bringing this down. The yellow is a little bit shorter. It's doing exactly what it says, not impacting that horizontal at all. Then when we get over here to the agency suppressor with the foregrip, you can kind of see that the orange is doing what it says it's going to do. When you combine them, it's helping out with the horizontal like it's supposed to, and stacking onto the vertical we get from the agency suppressor. So it's doing its job. As you unlock it, the attachment does what it says. With the field agent grip combined with that agency suppressor, you can see it's helping a little bit of both. And the SFOD speed grip, mostly horizontal, but a little bit of the vertical. And overall, it comes down to the same thing. When you use the agency suppressor, for whatever reason, the field agent grip works the best with it. If you're going to use a different muzzle, obviously you're not going to get that bullet velocity. But since this weapon is primarily geared towards being at range, because it's pretty much terrible close up or mid-range, it's not good. So at range, this is where you want to use the weapon. You're going to need maximum bullet velocity. So you're going to want to make sure you're using the right barrel, as well as the agency suppressor. Now let's go ahead and get into why this weapon doesn't perform quite as well as you would expect based off the statistical time to kill. So for this part, I thought it would actually be useful to use Truegamedata, which I always link in the description of all my videos, because he already has the weapon data in there for a lot of the weapons. This isn't really factoring in the attachments for the Krig or the QBZ, for example. We got the Ranger on there, but overall I'm excluding bullet velocity from this, so it doesn't really impact what we're talking about for these specific weapons. But I'm going to go ahead and explain and break down why these weapons just don't perform quite as good as you would expect. So overall, we have the AMAX down here. This thing packs a punch, and it does fairly well. And one thing to keep in mind is the AMAX is still pretty favorable, but it's pretty unforgiving if you start to miss shots because of the fire rate. And we're going to see that the Krig 6 has the same issue. The fire rate on the AMAX sits right around 630. So this is theoretical. So if you miss one bullet, it's going to jump up the distance that we see here, because this goes from 6 shots to kill up to 7 shots. And then if, let's say you miss a bullet, it's going to go up to 8, miss a bullet, 9, miss a bullet, 10, miss a bullet, 11. And that's how time to kill works. This is a theoretical time to kill, meaning that I'm firing 7 bullets, all 7 bullets are hitting. First one connects, and then all the other ones hit immediately after, and that is the time to kill. So in this first damage range, this is 6 shots to kill if you land chest shots, and then it drops off to 7. But that's theoretical again. So if you start missing a couple shots, the distance between those shots spikes significantly because the rate of fire, the bullets aren't coming out as fast. So if you miss a couple bullets, this TTK goes from 400 or 476 that you see it is right here, it'll jump up to like 700 just because you're missing shots. You could double it if you have 50% accuracy, which we know at people that get further away, the accuracy tends to diminish. So the theoretical TTK doesn't always line up. Bullet velocity tends to factor in that as well. But let's go ahead and move on to the next one. So then we have the Krig 6, which the Krig 6, you would think, hey, you know what? Statistically, it looks pretty good. It's right here. It's this little blue one. It's not really all that great up close. Nothing special. But then as soon as you get right around this 38-meter distance, the time to kill is always 828 milliseconds because of the way the damage value works out. The only thing that really beats this is the kilo. The kilo is still actually pretty good, all the way up to about 85 meters, but then anything beyond that, it drops off pretty hard. So it's still, the kilo is still going to feel exactly like the kilo up to about 85 meters. After that, it feels like a potato gun because you're adding 3 shots to kill. You land half as many shots. Well, it's really 6 shots now because it's twice as many. And then the TTK nosedives as far as being good. So that's kind of where you end up with an issue. So right here, you're like, cool, 828. But the big problem with the Krig is the fire rate is 652, which is only 20 rounds per minute difference than the AMAX. But it doesn't pack the punch as the AMAX, but it has a similar fire rate. But the same thing holds true. If you miss any bullets, even though it's incredibly accurate, your TTK drops off hard. So it feels like, one, it's going to take a lot of shots to kill. Even if you're landing, it still feels pretty good because the gun should actually be 9 shots up close, 10 shots at range, which isn't a lot of shots. But if you miss any bullets, that TTK falls off dramatically. And that's one of the biggest issues compared to using something like the Gfuel, which is this purple one that has a little bit slower TTK at 900. But its theoretical and its statistical time to kill are going to be a lot closer to the practical time to kill when you're actually using it, because its fire rate for the Gfuel is 730, almost 100 more than the other 2 weapons that we've talked about. And we get into the kilo. That's why it performs so well with the kilo. It had a 750 round per minute, so it ends up beating even the Gfuel. So that means that even if you're missing shots, if you get back on target pretty quickly, you didn't waste a lot of time in terms of time to kill for those shots in between. I know it sounds like a lot of an explanation, but that's essentially why the Krig does not feel as good, because there's other options that are going to allow to more consistency. And then if you're with the AMAX, even if you miss half the shots, your TTK is still so much faster that you're just better off using AMAX and learning how to use that. But if you're a fan of only low recoil weapons, you're probably going to get more consistency out of the kilo up to about 90 meters or the Gfuel up to infinity than you are going to get with the Krig, despite its relatively good time to kill at 828 milliseconds. Sounds good. Sounds better than it actually is, because in practical application of it, and you're actually using this weapon, unless you're 100% accurate, this thing does not melt. It just doesn't happen. So when it comes to the different barrels, there's a lot of different options for the range modifiers and the bullet velocity, as you can see on the screen. But this is just one of those cases where almost everything has to go to bullet velocity because you want your bullets to actually connect. Combining this with the agency suppressor will get you the maximum bullet velocity for using the Ranger. If you want a little bit of extra range, maybe you go with the Contour, and that's going to be your really only 2 options. There's not really much a reason to go with the bottom one. The takedown barrel, strafe speed, cool, but you're not really using this tight quarters, and the TTK is so dang slow that you're going to lose those gunfights regardless of how fast you're moving. Even if the takedown barrel had like 80% movement speed and you're flying across the screen, you're still likely going to die because of how slow the TTK is up at the close range engagements. And then the range modifiers don't mean anything if you can't actually hit your shots at range. So you kind of got to go all in on one of those 2 attachments. And you can get the bullet velocity up to about 1100, 1250 when you're combining those barrels with the agency suppressor. So that kind of ends up building the class, and we'll go ahead and take a look at the class setup now. One I was definitely disappointed in. I really thought it was going to be like a top tier class gun based off the TTK alone, but when you start looking at the fire rate, it just doesn't compete. It needs a little bit faster fire rate, or it needs to deal more damage, because it doesn't have a fast enough fire rate to compete with like the Gfuel or the Kilo in terms of consistency, and it doesn't pack the punch of the AMAX. So it's kind of in the middle there, not really doing a good at any obviously there's instances where you're going to be able to connect those bullets. Again, it's going to feel good, but it's going to be very deceptive. It's just not a good gun. So either go with the Ranger or the Contour. Personally, I would just go with the Ranger, so I get that extra bullet velocity and I can stack it with the agency suppressor. Since I'm primarily going to be using this thing for 50 meters plus, I'm going to be able to maximize it. My shots will actually connect. But overall, this just isn't generally a weapon I would use. 60 round mag, because I don't really feel like it's going to compete at the level and have the consistency that I want. I just feel like I'm going to get deleted with the AUG. But yeah, that's just kind of how it goes, right? We go with the 3X, and Cold War optics are pretty bad. So that's kind of like why the FFAR is done so well. So you don't really need an optic. It's used close range. AK-47 kind of get away with it. XM4 a little bit, it's just not strong enough up close. I think that this is going to be a similar issue with the Stoner, where it feels good, but that rate of fire really kicks it down a notch and makes it not as good as you'd want it to be. So hopefully you guys understand what I'm saying with the video. Pretty straightforward class setup. Hopefully you guys do enjoy the class setup, despite it being a little bit out of the top tier viable and just more viable, but nothing special. If you enjoyed the video, learned something new, please do me a favor, hit that like button. If you're brand new, looking to find your way back for more Call of Duty content, double check, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. Like I said, there will be a video on my other channel with myself, XclusiveAce, Truegamedata, and Drifter. So if you're looking to check that out, link is near the top of the description. Appreciate all the support. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.